So I better have a quick talk about this pivot before I get rid of it. So he's coming to pick it up tonight. I spent 3 days on it, pretty solid effort. So 5-6 hours yesterday, 4 hours the day before, 3.5, 4 hours the day before, and then a single run on the first night I got it. And yeah, it's the stiffest carbon black I've come across. It's stiff and it's dense. So it doesn't feel tingy and pingy down the trail. It just feels strong, and there's literally zero give in this frame. So I wasn't sure about the pivot frames. I've ridden them before in the past. I've ridden a Firebird that was just clappy and real tinny, wasn't that great. But this Max 6 is so stiff and so dense. So impressed with that. Not sure about longevity. This rear shot with DHX2, I don't like the collar on it. The spring collar, it's terrible. It's super awkward and just doesn't, it's not great. Finding a tune on it was a little bit finicky. It's got a very small window of excellence in my experience, and I might not be right on that because I'm not sure I got the exact spring rate. So the 350 was too soft for me. The 400 was good, efficient, fast, but maybe a little oversprung for me. So the 375 would have been good. Any turns on the preload on the 350, I could go 1, but any more than 1, 1.25, 1.5, the shock would top out constantly. So wasn't into that. The Fox 38, I got a good setup on the Fox 38, so I went from 3 tokens to 1 token, back to 2 tokens, back to 1 token. I like the 1 token, but I can get a more supple setup and still be strong with 2 tokens and a little bit less pressure. So 75 kilos, I ran 95 PSI with 1 token or 90 PSI with 2 tokens. Grip 2 damper, same as usual, I ended up at 3 out from open on the high speed compression, and I believe I'm 5 or 6 out from open on the low speed compression. That'll be on the next video as well. All of the settings will be on the next video I drop as well. So, or probably even before this video. So you'll be able to see exactly where I landed with the setup, front and rear. Efficiency. This thing didn't matter where I went with the spring rate. It's just got a platform where you're sprinting or you're pedaling up a hill, and it's just no bob, no nothing. It just sits exactly where it needs to sit. Super low front end with the flat bars that it came with, or 10mm rise bars that it came with. It was 1050 off the ground to the top of the bars, top of the grips. So super low, and with the oversprung rear end, it was really hard to ride. Once I got it sitting where it should be, never bottomed it out, never felt the bottom of it. Even with the 350 spring, I didn't feel the bottom, which was kind of surprising. But I think the 375 would be perfect for my weight. It's just efficient, progressive. They say it's not progressive. I heard someone say it's not progressive, but it's definitely progressive. It's definitely progressive. Handling-wise, 27.5 definitely has a potential to handle really well, but because I couldn't quite get it down in the sag where I wanted to, I couldn't quite corner it with as much confidence as I know this will have when it's at the right sag. So has the potential for a lot of confidence. I just wasn't quite there with the sag, I don't think. But eventually got a wicked performing back end, got it fast enough to ride a fairly rough trail here. Anstey's Hill's pretty rough and pretty bumpy, so if you can get compliance there, you're doing all right. So wasn't the most compliant bike I've ridden, but definitely good. Definitely impressed with the stiffness of the frame. It feels more akin to what the Banshee frame feels like now. So most carbon bikes have got the stiffness, but they've also got this tinniness where you feel everything through the frame. Whereas the Banshee and the Pole aluminium that they use is quite good at absorbing impacts, I guess, but is just more is quite stiff as well. Whereas a lot of other alloy, they'll absorb the impacts, but they come at a price. They're flexy and soft, like my Trek, for instance. So not too much to say about it. I'd love to have had it exactly where I need it, but doesn't matter. It was swinging, 65-degree head angle, definitely needs a 174. So a 174 will jack it up to 64.5 probably. This is a 160 at the moment. The seat angle isn't very steep, so it's 75.5. Now I've moved the seat forward. It's funny because it's got the Max printed on one side, which is in a completely different position on these rails of the seat. The Max on this rail is completely different position to the Max on this rail. So on this side, I'm pretty much at the max forward, but on that side I'm way past the max forward. So I rolled it and judged more by this side, brought the seat forward, dipped it down a bit, and it feels good. So it climbs much better than it did before I moved the seat. So that climbing position will slacken out a bit going to 170, but it will be beneficial going to 170 up the front. Absolutely, for sure. The XTR rear derailleur worked fine. I had to tune it a little bit. Once I tuned it, it was good. Could probably button off the B limit and bring the cage up a little bit more, but no worries. 170 cranks, could definitely go a 165 crank. The reach is 480 and the wheelbase is 1233. So on paper it's a long-ish bike. It's definitely a long reach bike, but on trail didn't feel big at all to me. Did not feel big at all. It's obviously got a shorter wheelbase than my 29er at 1243, but it didn't feel big, it didn't feel cumbersome, it felt super sprightly. It's so nice to be on a 27.5, and it's really, really nice to have such a stiff frame that doesn't give you so much tinging and rattling and feedback that you get from most carbon frames. The XT brakes, incredible, super powerful. Fox transfer post, really light under thumb. The clamp, this Matchmaker or whatever it is clamp that the XT works on is garbage. I had to play with that and actually put a bit of 3M tape in the wings, in the little wedge that sits under there to take up some space, so it actually stops rattling and moving around, because otherwise that attachment, doesn't matter how tight you do that Allen key, it doesn't foul out on the bar where it should. So it still rattles around and moves in within its little guide. So not into that, but I fixed it, so no biggie. The pivot grips aren't great, but they're alright. They're not much cushion, I guess. But overall, yeah, it could have been better for sure. I think if I got a better a better spring, it would have been better. And also, this rear shock, full open on the high-speed compression, any clicks of high-speed compression, it just does not get out of the way of things. So definitely over-damped on the high-speed compression on these DHX2s. So if you've got one, run it all the way open and then start tuning your low speed again and see if you can find something that works. I might be wrong, but that's what I think. That's what I've found on this, and that's what I've found on another one as well. So over-damped on the high-speed compression circuit. Not huge on this shock at all, it's just downsides. And with my 400 spring on it, it was always creaky, like where the spring slips into the collar. It must have just been constantly creaking. Doesn't do it with the 300 because it's a looser fit, but my 400 was a tight fit on the collar, so that was a bit annoying. Room for a drink bottle, it was alright. I'm not going to say it was exceptional because I didn't find what I want. I think if I had a different shock, I could have found a better tune, but maybe a lot to do with, yeah, definitely another shock, but a lot to do with not quite on my spring rate. When I'm trying to mack it into turns, I just couldn't get the back end down enough to be, it was still kind of a little bit like that around turns. So, but made it work. So thanks so much, dude, for letting me borrow it. And she's singing. You should be pretty happy with it. Get your spring rate right, and yeah, this thing will be firing. So all good.